In this video, we're going to look at 3 top dividend stocks based on dividend growth and company health. So just a couple things about dividends. Most people look for the highest yield, and that's not always the best choice. We want to look for companies that grow the dividend and have rising earnings. That's going to actually increase your cash flow over time because that dividend payment that they're sending you is increasing each year. With a stock that just pays a high yield, that may not always be the case. In fact, stocks that have high yields, there are some exceptions, but most stocks that have very high yields, it's actually because the dividend amount they haven't adjusted it and the stock price has dropped. So if you have let's say a company is paying a $1 dividend and it's a $100 stock, you have a 1% dividend yield. But if that stock falls to $50, you have a higher dividend yield now, even though the stock price fell. So what happens is that stock prices that fall generally end up reducing their dividend over time. Not always, but if the reason for the decline of the stock price is that the company isn't growing, maybe they're struggling to generate profits, then the stock price is going to fall and the dividend is eventually going to fall. So we want to find the opposite and find stocks that are rising, have strong earnings, have strong health, and that are increasing their dividend each year. That way you get the benefit of a rising share price and a rising dividend. So with that, let's get to some of these names. First one, W.W. Grainger. 1.8% dividend. That may not seem like a lot. It's not the high yield that's going to catch your attention, but what you want to look at is that they have increased their dividend 14.9% per year on average over the last decade. That means that if you invest in that stock, your cash flow would have increased 14.9% per year, right? The dividend yield doesn't always increase necessarily because the stock price might be going up even more. And so it's important to keep that in mind. If the price is rising and your dividend is rising, that's a really good thing. Analysts predict 28% yearly EPS growth over the next 5 years. The S&P 500 average is around 8 to 9%, so well in excess of that. Increasing earnings means more opportunity for the company to continue increasing the dividend, and higher earnings are also generally associated with increasing share prices. The company has grown EPS by 21% per year over the last 5 years. So that's what it's done in the last 5. The 28% is what analysts predict over the next 5 years. The stock has average returns of 14.5% per year over the last decade, outpacing the S&P, which is at about 12% per year. So that's what you want, a stock that outperforms and has an increasing dividend. Next one, Hubble, 1.5% dividend, again kind of low, but increasing that dividend 9.3% per year over the last decade. Analysts predicting 19.5% per year EPS growth over the next 5 years. It's grown earnings by 15% per year over the last half decade. And the stock has averaged 14.1% yearly returns over the last decade. So again, beating the S&P 500, nice steady growing dividend, increasing cash flow each year. And the final one, United Health Group. Smallest dividend yield of the list, 1.4%. I believe it was 1.5 and 1.8. So yeah, the smallest on the list, but the biggest average yearly dividend growth, 21% increasing cash flow to you as an investor over the last decade per year. Industry analysts predict 12.7% yearly EPS growth over the next 5 years. Very solid, allows for dividends to keep increasing. The company has grown EPS by 13.6% per year over the last 5 years, and really strong stock performance, up 23.4% per year on average over the last decade. You can pull up a chart here. I have all 3 just loaded up on here. So Grainger in blue, Hubble in orange, and United Health in green. Just make sure we have just data for dividends. there we go, because we are getting paid dividends. We want to make sure to include those in our return. So some really strong returns on all three, doing quite well. Obviously Hubble and Granger doing a little bit better over the last year. So just some stocks to consider in terms, if you're looking for dividends and you've wondered about dividend investing, not always best to just pick out the highest yield. These stocks will inevitably go through ups and downs just like the stock indices do, but overall, as long as they continue to produce strong earnings and they're growing those earnings, that tends to increase the share price over time. And if they are continuing to raise their dividend, then that benefits you as a shareholder in terms of increasing cash flow from year to year. So 3 stocks to consider for dividend growth.